Hello and welcome back to the Naval News, everybody. Hope you're having a great week. Look at this map we've got here for you, courtesy of United States Naval Institute News. Thank you to them for publishing this every week. This is the location, generally speaking, of our carrier groups as they're deployed around the world. And it looks like there's a lot going on, but I'm going to break this down for you. Let's begin in the Pacific with the Makin Island. Makin Island has been taking part with Sasangyeong 2023, which is the largest amphibious exercise with South Korea in 5 years. Good job for them kicking butt and doing that. The Nimitz Carrier Strike Group is with them, but they're operating in the East China Sea. They were still part of that exercise, though. The Sasangyeong is called a Twin Dragon in English, but I just like saying Sasangyeong. Okay, the Ronald Reagan in America are still in port. They're ready to deploy at any time, but they're getting that maintenance done, and they're just out there ready to go when called, when needed. George H.W. Bush is in the Mediterranean, continuing her very long deployment there. She's been there, I believe, since August, so quite some time. And I do want to say congratulations to the Dwight D. Eisenhower for completing Computex. Computex is a very difficult final exam, if you will, before a carrier strike group can go on deployment. They successfully navigated that, and so well done to all of them. They're back in port now, getting topped off on fuel, munitions, maybe a little bit of crew rest if they have time for that, saying goodbye to their families before they get ready to deploy to the Med and relieve the George H.W. Bush, who's well deserved of a relief at this point. Let's shift our focus over to the Pacific, where we have the Carl Vinson, who is publicly doing a workup for deployment, but she's doing more than that. Let me tell you what. And I want to say thank you to the families and the sailors right now, if somehow this reaches you, for what you're doing. The system they're testing right now is an absolute game changer, and it's going to give us a huge advantage across all branches of our service. And I just want them to know that those of us that know what's going on are extremely grateful for what you're doing, because it is amazing technology. And the Theodore Roosevelt is acting as an opponent to them and giving them a hard time. But from all indications, the system works great. So good job, Carl Vinson. And I look forward to watching your deployment whenever you get done with this test. All right, let's move on to China. Let's talk about the Chinese Navy. Oh, and before we even look at this map real quick, look at all of our carrier deployments. And we're not even including submarines and Coast Guard and Special Forces, of course. That's all secret. But just look at where we are around the world. And here's China. So recently, there's some diplomats from the United States visiting Taiwan, right? So this always gets China upset whenever that happens. And so they wanted to show some response, a show of force. And they were able to muster their aircraft carrier. Good for them. They managed to keep that thing still working. This aircraft carrier is ancient by naval standards, but yet they still somehow keep it going. And they sent a frigate with it. Oh, and a supply ship in case something breaks or if they need fuel, which is likely. So the Chinese Navy's response in force, the show of force, is literally 2 warships and a tanker versus what we're doing over there. A bit of a joke. Now, this tells us a little bit, if we want to read into this, about the readiness of the Chinese Navy, the PLAN. Yeah, they have a lot of ships. We've documented that here many times. But whenever push comes to shove and they want to show off something that's unscheduled and unexpected, look at what they're able to do ad hoc. They're not that flexible. They can get a carrier with an escort out there and some fuel. So this tells us a lot. This response is anemic. All right, let's move over to Iran. Speaking of anemic, but I have to give credit to these sailors. I do have a respect for any sailor that does the Magellan, which is what we called it in the Navy, and that's the transglobal transit. They've been doing this transit. These 2 Iranian ships, the Makran and the IRIS Dina, have been trans-navigating the globe since last year. And, well done to them for doing that. That's a major achievement. It is a show of capability, so I'll give them credit where credit's due. And we've been following them throughout this transit. Our last update, I believe, was either in January or February. And we left them right outside the Panama Canal. We fully expected them to transit the Panama Canal into the Atlantic Ocean, but they never did. Now, I've transited the Panama Canal myself, so I can share a little bit of insight. And what I experienced was a lot of ships are always at anchor waiting for their turn to go through the Panama Canal. Now, U.S. warships and other navies do have an agreement where they can sometimes skip the line, and that's kind of nice, so we don't have to sit at anchor for a couple days like cargo ships have to. That's a bit of a privilege. Think of it as having a fast pass at Disney, a bit like that, right to the front. Well, apparently, Iran doesn't have a fast pass. Also, it costs money. You have to pay money to go through the Panama Canal. It's not free. So they either didn't want to pay the fee or they didn't want to wait in line, and they decided to go around South America up to Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, and that's Cape Horn down there. Now, the weather at Cape Horn in the sea states can be terrible. It can be extremely dangerous, actually. So good job to them for navigating very hazardous waters. That is still an admirable achievement for any ship. They spent a few days in Rio de Janeiro refueling, resupplying. After a long transit across the Pacific, I'm sure they enjoyed some liberty there. And then they transited the South Atlantic to Cape Town, South Africa. And that's where they are right now. And credit to Maxar Technologies. These satellite photos are amazingly detailed. This is a photo from space, people. Look at that. I can read the bumper sticker on that ship. It says "Death to America" right there. And credit to USNI News reporter Sam Legrone for writing this story too. I got the picture from his article. I'll link Sam Legrone's article in the description for you as well, so you can read about it. So this is where they are at time of this recording in South Africa, and I want you to keep these countries' names in mind because that's really what today's video is about. As much as we love to talk about Navy, some very important things have happened around the world recently that affect us here in the United States and Europe, if you're watching there. So Brazil, South Africa, and BRICS. Okay, so BRICS is an economic alliance, if you will, an economic treaty between countries. And the countries are Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Those are the 5 founding members there. And they're growing. That's the news today, is they're adding new members. So one of the big things that happened was Xi Jinping went to Moscow recently and apparently convinced Russia to agree to use the renminbi currency, that's the Chinese currency, as the staple currency of the BRICS agreement. So this is not by any means a done deal. All the other countries want to create a new currency that they all have, founded together to take credit for, I guess, and then use that. China, on the other hand, wants to use the yuan. Now I need to define some terms here because these get confusing in the YouTube comments. So what is the RMB? What is the yuan, right? So the RMB is the official currency of the People's Republic of China. The yuan is the basic unit of that currency, of the renminbi. Renminbi is also often shortened to RMB, and that's how I'm going to refer to it. Now, I had some questions about the yen. Americans especially, we tend to confuse the yen and the yuan because they sound similar. The yen is the basic monetary unit of Japan and isn't even in this conversation. So we're talking about the RMB, okay? And if you want to, you can still use the word yuan, kind of the same thing. It's the currency of China. So China wants to use that for all trades, and the big thing is trading oil. So there's something called the petrodollar here, where if you buy a barrel of oil from OPEC, it has to be done in the US dollar. And that's where the term petrodollar came from, because part of the value of the dollar is backed by OPEC oil, not just American assets. That may be a surprise to some of you Americans, but that's how it works, man. So China wants to create, and has created, this already exists, by the way, the petro yuan. And they want to begin trading OPEC oil in yuan, or RMB, and call it the petro yuan. And that's already a mechanic in economics. That already exists. So Saudi Arabia, as you see here in the picture, top right, recently went to China and agreed to open diplomatic channels with China, I believe for the first time since House of Saud ruled Saudi Arabia. While they were there, they met with Iran, coincidentally, and they agreed. Saudi Arabia, this is monumental. Saudi Arabia and Iran have agreed to open diplomatic communications with each other over the next 2 months. And this is big because they've been in a proxy war with each other in Yemen for years now. And it's a very bloody, terrible war. And so by them coming together, at least talking, it may bring an end to that war. Also, United Arab Emirates, I've circled their name there on the map of the Middle East so you can see where they're at if you don't know. has also agreed to reestablish diplomatic communications with Iran. So Iran, Saudi Arabia, and UAE, the three really big powerhouses of the Middle East right now, and big oil suppliers for OPEC, are agreeing to work together for the first time in my memory. It looks like they're all coming together, and guess who they're lining up with? It's China and to some extent Russia as well. Remember, Russia's an OPEC member and a founding member of BRICS. So they're all going to work together apparently if their application into BRICS is approved. And by all indications, it serves China's needs to approve it. So it's probably going to end up happening. So BRICS will always be BRICS and have the five founding members, but they're expanding membership. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Here's a picture of the Asian globe on the right and the kind of the Middle East and Africa there on the left. And as they add these new members, look at what this does, not just economically, like I've explained, where the petrodollar and the petro-yuan will be side by side in parity when buying oil from OPEC. You'll have your choice, it looks like, if you're in this BRICS. But look at the military consequences of this agreement. And I want to stress, BRICS is an economic agreement, but look at the militaries of the members of BRICS. This is what they control. In the red, I've outlined the current founding members. So we have South Africa there controlling access into the Indian Ocean, at least being able to monitor it from the west. China, years ago, built a major military naval base in Djibouti. Now, Djibouti is still an independent country, but China runs the port, and they operate a squadron of ships out of this port all the time. They rotate the ships around so they're not there forever, and it's just an overseas deployment, much like the American presence in Japan. Naval presence in Japan, very similar to that. And they operate their fleets up and down the Red Sea and in the Gulf of Aden, where the Somali pirates have been a problem in the past. And so that's a permanent forward deployment controlling that choke point. Now, in yellow are members who are applying or express desire to join BRICS and would be in line with China's values to accept them. Let's start at the top with Egypt. Egypt obviously controls the Suez Canal, and they want to become a member of BRICS. That's another choke point and a very important one for trans-global trade. Trade going into the Indian Ocean has to either go by South Africa, but most of it goes through the Suez Canal. In the Middle East, we have Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Iran normalizing, or at least establishing communication with each other and normalizing relations with China, also expressing an interest in joining BRICS. Obviously, if they work together, they have full control of the Straits of Hormuz. They will dominate exports coming out, oil exports coming out of the Middle East. And Indonesia, which has large oil fields of its own, has formally applied for membership of BRICS. And they will control the vital Strait of Malacca, where most of the world's shipping goes through in this region of the world. Now, on the other side of the Strait of Malacca, you have Singapore. Singapore is still very friendly with the United Kingdom and, of course, the United States. So they don't have, of course, total control in that region, but they do exert significant control over these access points, these choke points where all the shipping goes through. This is all very important to China because China has a real problem, multiple problems, but a big one is resources. So China has lots of people, but doesn't have lots of natural resources. They just got a little bit unlucky with geography. So they need to import precious metals and especially oil and coal, fertilizer too, but especially all those fossil fuels to keep their economic engine running. And by securing these partnerships and controlling these choke points and establishing a petro-yuan and a currency to trade around the US dollar, so US sanctions have less of an effect, the more secure they feel economically. And it's going to work. Now, they still have a real population problem because that one-child policy they had for so long completely decimated at least one generation, and I would maybe argue 2 generations of people. And I don't know how they're going to fix that, but by securing shipping and resources against any kind of sanctions that may happen in the future, this BRICS agreement makes a lot of sense for that. All right. So this is what BRICS looks like. This is how BRICS looks at the rest of the world. Everybody that's not in BRICS right now is in red, which obviously is a lot of countries. But look at who is. We got Russia with all their natural resources. Russia is so big. They have everything from precious metals to oil. They're so rich in natural resources. They really don't need to produce anything else. They can just dig stuff out of the ground and sell it. They're very privileged in that position. China and India have huge populations, so they can take those resources and add value to them and make things. And then, of course, Brazil has oil fields of its own, and South Africa is strategically important and is looking for an economic partner. And it looks like they found one. Once they secure the Middle East, Indonesia, and maybe even Turkey, who knows? We will see what comes next. Anyway, so I want to know what you think about this. Is BRICS a good deal for the world? Can we live in a world where we have a petrodollar and a petro-yuan trading oil out of OPEC, buying and selling oil out of OPEC? Can we survive in that world? Will the American ego allow that to happen? Or will we have to fight to maintain our US dollar monopoly? The U.S. dollar, in terms of central bank reserves globally, has been in decline, down to about 59% today, up from whatever it was decades ago. So we've been in a declining position for a long time. And guess what's making up those other positions? Well, it's the euro and it's the yuan. It's just other global currencies are increasing as the dollar comes further and further out of use. We are clearly a currency in decline here. And I think going forward, we're going to see the dollar, we're going to see the euro, and we're going to see the yuan. And for trading oil and fossil fuels, we're going to see the petrodollar and the petro-yuan. And if we can live with that, there's economic opportunity here. We don't have to fight. We can trade with BRICS and benefit from that. Or we can let our egos get in the way and we can fight about it. So which do you think is going to happen? Leave your comments down below. I'm a pretty optimistic person by nature. I think we'll work this out. China's got more problems than economics, and so it's not in their best interest to do anything to upset that. And so I think both parties, between the United States, Europe, NATO especially, and China, we'll find a way to work together. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye. Hey, join my Patreon. Look at that. We added a new tier too. It's not on the screen. We have a $3 tier now. Now, somebody had asked about $3 tier. $5 was too much. They were like, I got $1, but I don't have $5. So we have a $3 tier now. And join our Discord. If you join the $3 tier and all that, you can join the Discord. I'll see you over there. We're on Discord every day. You want to talk to me? You want to ask me a question? You can do that. Hit me up on my social medias. I got the Twitters. I got all the links in the description, man. But I'm always on Discord. You can ask me a question one-on-one. I'll sit there and talk to you. All right. Have a good one. Bye. I think I said bye twice.